Hello everyone, Zenro Gaming coming at y'all with another video, and in today's video we are going to do the star ratings for the Attack on Titan set. Now I did plan on doing the slide. You can see here I got kind of halfway through on the slide, and then I started seeing people say that they wanted me to kind of do the star ratings for these two sets, and just to save time, these videos kind of do the same thing. So instead of going through and finishing, you can see here on my slides, getting halfway through back to where I was on Kogias. I did the Kogias side. I will also do a video for the Kogias decks, giving them the star ratings, but instead of doing a presentation slide going over Attack on Titan, I did kind of want to use this cool thing here to start it out with. It's an all-new IP for the Union Arena trading card game. You get a starter deck and a box. They are obviously, out this upcoming weekend. Pre-releases were this past weekend. 2 new 3-star cards. We actually had someone at our card shop, local card shop, Omni Cards Collectible Gaming. One of the guys did pull the 3-star Levi, which is really, really cool that he was able to do that. But this is just some of the art I have already worked on, so I kind of wanted to use it just to give you guys, I worked on it, so I just wanted to share it, and I thought this art was really, really cool design here. So you got 2 3-stars, a starter deck, and booster packs. And one thing to talk about this set is, when it came out in Japan, it was at a different state of the game than when we are getting these, right? I think that when they came out in Japan, they did have a pretty high ceiling in what all the decks did. And I think that they are still all usually, most of the decks, half of them in most cases, I think 4 of the decks are all pretty decently strong. You could play them, but maybe not having such a humongous impact on the meta like it did in Japan. For here now, we have One Punch Man, a couple other things that they didn't have. And then I think a couple of these decks just feel a little age from when they're being released here for us. But still some very strong decks to see in this particular set. And what I want to do now is go into the star ratings so everyone can kind of get an idea of what I think a lot of the best decks are. And usually I stream this particular thing, but I just wanted to get all my thoughts out on it. If you guys prefer me stream it again so everyone's input can get put on it, just let me know what y'all think down in the comments. The channel is newer. I'm working really hard to get a lot of content out. Typically, Digimon and Union Arena are the main ones, but like I said, I'm trying to do a little bit of everything. It's just at the moment, Union Arena is very busy right now with 2 sets releasing with a starter deck. And if you would prefer me do these star rating videos with a live audience so I can get y'all's input as well, let me know. We can figure it out together. But make sure you leave those comments down below of what y'all want to see from the channel, and I will answer everyone. But starting off this particular set, we do have Historia Blue Events. This is the highest rating deck I have for this set. Going to start with the highest rating and go down, so that way we can get an idea of what all the other decks are kind of getting tested and based off of, right? Starting with the best deck, at least what I believe is the, I think 3 decks really are kind of meta-ish decks that you can play with. I do feel like Historia overall is just a really, really strong, consistent deck. I'll go through the star gradings and then I'll go into the key notes. For Historia, I have a star grading out of 20 out of 25. So 20 out of 25 rating means that this is a really good deck. Y'all know based off of how I do the star ratings, any deck that is, typically like 16 and up is a solid deck. This is a pretty strict way that I am strict in the fact that you would think, oh, one of the best decks would be in the 25s, but spoilers, no deck is a 25 in Union Arena, and most decks are not 24. I think we only had one deck ever be a 24, and that was probably the Blue Sukuna deck when it came out in that time and frame. But just being over a 16, I think, makes a deck based off of my, 5 stars in 5 different category ratings, above average, right? Because most decks will sit at about 15 based off of the way I do this. So an average deck being 15 means anything over that is a pretty solid deck, and anything close to pushing the 20s is a really strong deck. But Historia is just really, really good. I gave Historia a 4 out of 5 stars for speed. The deck is really, really low to the ground, 4 energy being your main play point, and then a lot of times early in the game, it's actually just 2 that you need. You just need 2 to really start getting your options going off, so that way these events can really pop off and fuel them in the graveyard. On the defense, I gave it a 4 as well, or the speed, I gave it a 4 as well, because the deck is just really, really, it is able to apply impact and multiple attacking. So speed and offense, I think, are a little bit two different things. Offense is kind of like your power in the game, whether that be with BP, multiple attackings, or instances of impact, things like that. And speed is just how low to the ground you are. If it had a 3-drop raid, I think it would have put it in the 5. This deck is really, really low to the ground, very, very fast. But then also has some offensive power in the forms of multi-attacking and impact. And I think the multi-attacking and the impact in general are what give it that 4th star, because the BP threshold isn't there too much on these cards unless you're really getting into it later in the game with the events. As far as defense, I did give it just 3 out of 5 stars on defense. You have to do something really, really wrong to get less than 3 stars on something. It is a solid deck. It has two 4-drop raids, which are a very big part of defensive decks to keep that 3-star rating. And I think that if it did only have 1 raid, it'd be a 2-star. But this deck does have 2 4,000 BP raid targets that you can live with. And then earlier in the game, on the notes here, it does have a Ymir that made me think about giving it a half star on the defensive rating. But seeing that card, it's just a 3 or 4 of in the deck is a really, really important card. But I think that maybe if it had a double blocker or some sense to really put it at this defensive. Now you do have the color trigger of blue, which is pretty defensive and really good too. But for the most part, I think 3 out of 5 stars is fair for the blue Historia event deck. Now, a lot of decks do not get a 5 in a single category, but Historia, if there is one thing to take from this deck, is that she is the consistency queen. 5 out of 5 stars for consistency. This deck has so much draw power, so much search, so much getting back your AP. You are able to see all these cards really early and really fast. The consistency of this deck is what makes it stand out above the other decks. Being 5 stars on something is a really, really big deal, and we don't see that a lot in my ratings for any deck to get anything on this level. So 5 stars for consistency is the main sticking point of this deck. It is super consistent. You will see these plays all of the time, if not in most of your games. And then just 4 out of 5 stars for removal / utility. The utility part, reason it getting is 4 out of 3 stars, is utility can essentially mean anything, right? This category is pretty vague. I've been using removal / utility in different senses. So utility can be anything from card draw, searching, getting AP back, anything like that, and the deck does that in scores, so it gets that extra 4 out of 5. I think if it had a little bit more of removal, I could have gave it close to 5 stars, but it doesn't. Your form of removal here is making your opponents kind of have to block you, not want to take that other double attack, right? But 4 out of 5 stars, all of this adding up. I will go through it again real quick so we can get this final star rating, and then I'll give y'all some key points. Speed, 4 out of 5 stars. Offense, 4 out of 5 stars. Defense, 3 out of 5 stars. Consistency, an amazing 5 out of 5 stars. And then removal / utility, 4 out of 5 stars, giving Historia Blue Events Ymir deck a solid 20 out of 25 star grade, being the #1 deck that I'm rating out of this set. This is such a strong deck. Our extracurriculars, I thought about changing these up. Everyone said maybe change them up. I'll keep them the same for this video. You guys give me some ideas of what y'all want these extracurriculars to be. I am down to change them for every deck, right? At the moment, just going based off of skill and fun level are my 2 fun categories. I think a skill, it is just a 3 out of 5. This deck doesn't do anything really complicated. The hardest choices you're going to do are whenever you do your event to look at the top 2 cards. Sometimes it is hard to decide what card you want to put in your sideline and what to keep in your hand to draw. The couple of games I got to play test against it, that was always the main thing that the opponent who was playing with it was always trying to decide to do. And then fun level, it's just a 3 out of 5. I don't think the deck does anything crazy. If you really like just holding your cards, moving through more of your deck and doing things like that, then this fun level will be a 5 out of 5 for you. It's a lot of stimulation, being able to pick up your deck a lot, to search the top couple cards, draw cards, pick cards up, put them in your sideline. In that instance, if you really like a deck that is stimulating physically like that, you would appreciate the fun level a little bit more. But for me, just a 3 out of 3, pretty even on the skill and fun level, 3 out of 5 stars each. But what are the key notes for this deck, right? What do we need to know if you are playing with this deck or against this deck, right? I have changed this to, the pluses on all of these are the positives, and obviously the little minus signs on the left are going to be the negatives that we are taking against the deck. I just wanted to distribute that a little bit better. I had just a regular dash mark, but someone came with a good idea that I put plus marks by the ones that are good things so people can see them stand out a little more, and then the minuses for the bad things, right? Key note number 1, insane levels of consistency in card draw, 5 stars. I put that as a note right here because it is insane for me to give anything a 5 out of 5 stars. But I think if there's one deck that speaks and just preaches consistency, it is this deck, and it is what every other deck should go based off of if they want to have a 5-star consistency with all this draw power and everything that it can do with searching. That is the main thing you need to take out of this deck. I don't think it's the most powerful or most crazy deck in the game, but if you're going into a big tournament, consistency is king, and it is very key. If you're going into like 6 rounds of a tournament, you want to make sure you're taking a deck that can do something all the time, always seeing it and being consistent at doing that. And with that being said, this deck I think is going to win a lot of games just off of being super consistent. I don't think it's the most powerful or scary deck in any sense of the imagination of that, but it is the most consistent deck. It offers multiple attacks and impact to close out the game. Right now, the BP stats on this deck are not very, very high, but being able to double attack with the Ymir Jaw Titan, being able to restand is really good. And then Historia late in the game, if you have the 6 events, being able to get that impact 1 does help you close out the games really good. And then the 2-drop Ymir 4K on opponent's turn keeps the deck alive early. That card is so important for you to be able to see. You drop it down on the board early, and then now your opponent who would normally try to rush you down going against this deck, knowing that you need, it is a low to the ground deck, but it kind of has a late game that power level that scales it. The later in the game this deck goes, the better and better it gets, and it keeps doing what it does. And that 2-drop Ymir that is 4K on your opponent's turn, if you have a Historia out, is probably the key card in the deck. If you are going against this deck and you see that card come out, just go ahead and get rid of it. Don't let them actively get, if that card gets 3 blocks a game on your smaller bodies, being able to be that 4K, you just get rid of that card. And I promise you, if you just kill that card every time it comes out, you'll be able to beat this deck a lot easier. There's not a ton of weak points of the deck, but it is weak to early aggro decks. If you don't see that Ymir, you don't have a lot of ways to really survive an early aggressive deck, which I think is what this deck, they did a good job building this deck, making it weak to early aggro, and it is very, very weak to early aggro. If you do not see one of your 2 raid targets that give you the 4K or that Ymir, I do believe the Ymir is the key card in the deck that really keeps it alive for the early game, keeping it in the game. So it is weak to early aggro, but if you see the Ymir, it kind of helps stifle that a little bit. But even with the Ymir, if your opponent's able to put down 2 early 35, 3,000 multiple attackers, which every game I played against the deck, the couple games I did win, was because I was playing something that was really, really aggro, and I used every kill spell I had to really put them down back behind in the game early, so that way they were not able to, just let you swing at them. A lot of times this deck is not going to block your attacks because they want you to give them cards from their life to their hand. But if you are able, to put them in a bad enough spot to where they have to block your characters and now they don't get to keep theirs, that's where the deck really falls apart. Its kill spell is great late game, but not early. So the kill spell, it just gives you, it starts at 2,000. I believe it's 2,000. And then it goes up from there from each different event that you have in your deck. So that being that case, I do want to, come out of this and pull up you guys at least a quick little, deck profile that I have built for the deck. So that way people asked to see this last time. So this is technically my deck profile I have done for the deck. You can see here that it is just a pretty cookie cutter build deck. Nothing crazy on it here. I will take pictures of these for you guys to see. Just, kind of maxing out. This Mikasa is a really important card letting you draw one trash when getting all your events. And you can see here you do have to run a lot of events in the deck. I do think that this bomb card, I teched one in here for my build of the deck. I think this is a really big deck or a piece to a deck that people can use to run and really help give the deck some early game aggro. It only costs 2. I think it's meant to be played in this deck and people just aren't doing it. But choose up to 1 character, 3500 less BP on your opponent's front line and return it to their hand, right? This is just helps you keep yourself alive early in the game. And then, like I said, this Ymir is the key card in the entire deck. It is so important to see this card. I only have it at 3 of because you just really need to see 1 or 2 in the game. But during your opponent's turn, if you have Historia on your field, 1000 BP. Obviously just maxing out of the Mikasa to help give you a little bit of energy generation and another 4k body. That's only 3 energy to use, and then 4 of your raid targets. And then, like I said, touching on the event card, choose one character with 1000 less BP on opponent's frontline and sideline. If Historia reaches on your field, add 1000 to the BP range for each event in your sideline. Really solid deck, really cool deck. Glad to see people, I hope a lot of people do play it, and I think you will see it at your tournaments, right? All right. Going on to deck 2, in second place with a grade of 19 out of 25 stars is going to be Attackontitan Red. I know a lot of people are probably surprised that, Levi wasn't one of the top 2 decks. I do think that all 3 of those decks, spoilers, that's the one that's coming up next. But Historia, Attackontitan Red, and Levi are all really solid decks. The most fleshed out, I think, best decks from this particular set that you can play. I think that the Attackontitan deck just edged out the Levi deck, but it is in second place with 19 out of 25 stars. I gave it a speed rating of 4 out of 5 stars. I had a hard time maybe not trying to give it this 4-star because your raid targets are 4 and 8 cost, but I think that you can really add the other 4-drop raid Aaron to this deck, and it helps speed it up tremendously, making it a very fast deck to get online. You can generate some really good energy in this deck to make this deck really pop off, and I think the speed and consistency of seeing those multiple energy generator cards help speed this deck up a little bit more than you would think of in the first place. So 4 out of 5 stars on the speed rating. And then on offense, it got 4.5 stars out of 5. I thought about giving it 5, but I could not do that. The deck is just so offensively oriented. It's hard not to give this, I think, 5 stars. If it had maybe more instances of impact or more double attacking instances, then maybe. But pushing it, the main thing you want to know about this deck is it has a high offensive power because its 8-drop not only has damage too, but it also lets you, the offense in this deck is its defense because it activate main if on the front line, choose up to one character with 2000 less BP on opponent's front line, and sideline it. That is insane, making it be able to swing in and make sure you get that damage too, and you also have instances to be able to give it impact on the body. The offense in this deck is insanely strong, just not edging out the 5 stars. I think if it had another instance of way of getting to double attack, it would definitely be one of the most offensive power oriented decks in the game. But 4 out of 5 stars, this is definitely the key part of the deck, is it has big offensive powers, right? And it now coming on to defense, 3 out of 5 stars. It's not lacking in anything on defense, but it doesn't do anything special on defense. I would think, to be honest, the early game is kind of weak for the deck. You don't have a ton of, really good like double blockers or anything like that. Your color trigger is pretty good in life early in the game, so that kind of helps you out. But one of the weaker parts is definitely the defense of the deck. You don't do anything crazy on defense, and you don't have a lot of ways to recur your value. In this deck, if they kill the 8-drop, and you don't have another one ready to go, you might be in a little trouble there. In the consistency, so 3 out of 5 stars on defense. Going to consistency, I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. The deck is way more consistent than I thought it would be. Out of all the decks, in this set, this one definitely surprised me the most with just how good it was. I thought it was kind of going to be just a normal green build 'em up deck, get some kind of late game, and just be kind of a nice even deck all around with a good maybe top end offensive power. But the deck is more consistent than you would think because the key to the basement, letting you search up a lot of cards, get your action points back, adds a humongous consistency piece. If I had something like that in Kurapika where I got to do that, the deck would be insane consistency. But the key to the basement is one of the key cards in the deck, no pun intended, but it makes it so consistent, being able to grab your Aaron cards or being able to grab that Inheritor, Titement, or Basement cards from it to your deck, get the action point back. It is so consistent, really strong. You have multiple ways to keep your energy high, so all of that pertains to the consistency of the deck being a 4 of. The deck being a 4 out of 5 stars on consistency was definitely the most shocking part to me when I played against the deck. I think 4 or 5 games I played against it. Very consistent, not your normal build 'em up deck. There is a lot of consistency here, and I was very surprised about that. And then going on to removal / utility, I gave it 3.5 stars out of 5. The half of the stars mainly comes out of the fact that your bodies have have removal on them, like the 8-drop Aaron being able to clear some stuff out. Utility, the draw power of the Key to the Basement, being able to search a lot through your deck and get the action points back, leads to you being able to play a lot of cards on one turn and get your hand filled back up. In a lot of the games, you have no issue being able to just pay that 1 action point to get the draw, use the Key to the Basement, search, get the action point back, and it's like you never even waste an action point to do anything. The utility is really, really good in this deck, and that's why I decided to give it that 3 out of 5 stars. Not quite enough to be a full 4 stars on the utility aspect, but enough to get it up there, right? All that added up gives the grade a 19 out of 25. I think if I was feeling maybe a little bit, more generous to it, I could have given it a 19.5 out of 25 by just making the removal / utility go up to 4. But for some reason, I was just wanting to hold back on it a little bit from this deck. I think that it is missing maybe some more ways to keep it, I don't know. Maybe this should just be a 4 out of 5 stars because it is pretty. It has a lot of different things going on, but mainly just trying to push for damage on your opponent is the main thing. For the extracurriculars, I gave the skill a 3 out of 5 stars. It's not very hard to pilot the deck, and then a fun level 4 out of 5 stars. It is pretty fun to be able to swing at your opponent with multiple instances of damage too, and watch them try to figure out which one they should block. But going through all the gradings again. For the Attack on Titan Red deck, the speed was a 4 out of 5 stars. The offense was a 4.5 stars out of 5 stars. The defense was a 3 out of 5 stars. The consistency is a 4 out of 5 stars. And the removal / utility, I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Bringing the grade up to a 19 out of 25. A very, very high rating for any deck, and this is a really strong deck that you need to watch out for. But what are some of the key points you need to look out for this deck, right? It has multiple damage to instances, right? Which makes it very, very scary. The 6-drop and the 8-drop both have damage to, very reminiscent of Suzaku Green, but with a little bit more shenanigans on just kind of boosting yourself up and giving you different options to do outside of just being able to pop anybody and swing through. Really, really scary being able to do that. The closeout power of the deck is really high, pertaining to the damage too. If you are able to get any early swings out and then be able to raid later, say your opponent's already down to 5 and you are able to get on like turn 5, the 6, and the 8 drop down, now your opponent is really like, wow, what am I supposed to do? Am I going to take these 4 damages, block out the other 2, and put myself down to 1 life with that instance of impact being able to kill me next turn? This deck can really close out games, and that is how you need to think about this deck. You are a late game, put a lot of power on the board, a lot of damage, make your opponent have to answer it, and you are able to close out the games. It generates energy really, really well, which I was very surprised about. You don't get stuck on the 6 to 8 energy that hard. The 8 maybe sometimes comes up, but you have ways to keep the energy generated. That was one of the most surprising parts of the deck, was how you keep your energy so well throughout the game with the multiple energy generators. And then the deck thinning makes the deck very, very consistent. I was really sleeping on just how consistent the basement and Key to the Basement cards make the deck, and that is an amazing combo for the deck that I wish I could see in some of the other build 'em up decks I like to play, having some kind of package like that. So this deck is all power, all gas, late, and very, really consistent of getting there. So what is the downfall of the deck? Well, it can be swarmed and slowed down with chump blockers. That is one thing. You don't always have impact on the board. And if your opponent can match your 6-drop with a chump blocker, now you're not getting as much damage out of that card unless you are willing, to trash cards from your hands to like get rid of those cards. And at that point in the game, it seems like that's not always the best thing to do unless you're closing out the game. You really want to save that trash in the card to kill something. So you can be slowed down and swarmed with just a lot of chump blockers. Any kind of like swarm deck, I think, can counter this deck just by being able to throw up blockers in the way of not trying to kill your bodies and just block it out each time. If they play down a 1-drop that can block out your 6-drop later in the game, they are in most parts going to be winning the game off of that value alone. It has an issue with the weak early game, like I just said. If you rush this deck down, which the first couple times I played against the deck, I wasn't respecting how often I needed it to, attack early against the deck. And I think a couple early attacks make them, later in the game, want to block with the 6-drop, which is not in their best interest. I think with this deck in general, you never want to block with the 6 and 8-drop if they're going to die. You rather just take the life, and I think that, if you're playing this deck, be mindful of that. Let your opponent hit you. You're going to get some value off of that, and you'll have a better time with the deck. Now, bringing up a deck profile for you guys here, I do have mine. I do believe this one's my particular deck here. Alright, so this is my list that I put together, and one of the key cards, like I said, I want to talk about is the basement, right? It's 6 energy, 1 action point, but if you have a key to the basement in your sideline, it only costs you 4. And then when it's played, you draw 1, trash 1, and it generates 3 energy. This card is absolutely insane. I think a 2 of it is, you know, enough. I think in the couple of I played 2 different versions of the deck against other people, and I think that they were, one was running 2, one was running 3. If you need to see the card, it's never that bad to have in your hand either, because if you just drop 2 of these down, now you generate 6 energy off of 2 cards for the rest of the game, and that doesn't actually feel that bad, to be completely honest. You're going to be set up for the rest of the game. And then we've already touched on both of the raid targets, but like I said, if you do tech in this Aaron here, it does give you another instance of impact, and I think more people need to realize they can play this card in the deck. You don't care about the other part of it too much. From the outside, it always has impact, and that is the main thing to take away from this card. It gives you a 4 energy raid target that has impact, and you can apply a lot of pressure earlier in the game. Now, I do think trying to fit 4 of this is pretty hard. You could take away the arming, but I think this arming is really, really good, but also a little clunky because you want him on the front line. But very solid list here. I think that this is kind of how I built the deck. If you want to take out the Aarons, you can, but I think that this card offers the deck so much value that you don't get out of other cards, and it helps kind of keep the deck, you know, in a decent spot early in the game. Now, I know this video is getting pretty long, but these ones always take a while, so we are going to deck 3, and it's obviously going to be Levi Aggro Blue. This deck is so good. A lot of people are really, really hyped for this deck, and it is going to be a lot of people's favorite deck from the set, and it was definitely the most popular deck a lot of people were building at the shop. It has a lot of cards that you need to get that are hard to get, the Levi's being from the extra pack in the starter deck, 4 of the raid Levi's, the Irwins also hard to get. I think that this deck will be a little hard for you to build because a lot of people are going to be wanting to play it. I do foresee it being the most popular deck in the set, and it's just getting edged out, you know, by 0.5 on the grade rating, right? I gave the raid attackontitan 19. I'm giving Levi Aggro Blue a star grade of 18.5 out of 25 stars. So, you know, pretty close. It's really, really strong deck. Anything, like I said, over a 16, I think, is a really strong deck in the game. I have a very, you know, tough grading system here. No deck being, I think, over 24 outside of one deck ever in the card game for me. So anything over 15, 16, it means this is a really solid deck that you could probably do really well in tournaments. I do definitely think that 17 and up line is like kind of what meta decks are for my grading. But let's get into it. The speed is a 3.5 stars out of 5. It's not the fastest deck in the world. The Levi raid being a 5 and the other one being a 6 means that the deck isn't super fast, but I do think the, you know, I gave it the 0.5 here based off of the base stats of the cards alone that are a little bit lower in the game. A lot of instances of 3,500 plus BPs, letting you be able to get a lot of early attacks in, probably faster than your opponent would think, right? That being the Irwin here, when attacking, you can pay the AP to boost it up. Sometimes that comes in clutch because you want to pay the APs, but just being a 3,500 block swinger and blocker early in the game like that is really, really good. But the main defining stat was the, you know, pretty close. It got a 5 out of 5 stars on offense. This deck lives and dies by how offensively power-oriented it is. I was very surprised that I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars on the offense, to be honest. But if there's one deck that does this maybe quite as well, I would put it along the lines of the SAO Blue Sort of Online deck. I think that deck kind of has the same vibe of this one, being able to put so much offensive pressure on the board of your opponent that it really puts them in a bad spot once you get going. The offense is the star of the show. You know, you have multiple instances of being able to double attack, boost your BP, all kinds of stuff here. Bounce characters back to your opponent's hand in an offensive way. This card is so good. This deck is so good at being very offensive oriented, and you know, snipe being in the deck. It is just so strong. Like, the offensive power of this deck is insane, and it makes a lot of sense, right? Because it is Levi. He is a powerhouse in the show, and the deck does show out all of its power. I was a little, you know, I was thinking about only giving this a 4.5 stars out of 5, mainly because the Levi does not keep that 5k BP threshold, which can be an issue in some instances. But when you're playing the 6-drop Levi, you're almost essentially winning the game that turn, because it is going to have 5,000 BP. You are going to get double attack and snipe, so you're going to clear off 2 big bodies. So that one turn alone, I think, edges it out to be 5 stars instead of 4 out of 5. But in most cases, to be, 5 out of 5, you have to have all these double attacking. And it has double attack, it has snipe, it has ways to, restand, all kinds of shenanigans. And with that being said, 5 out of 5 stars on offense for Levi. Definitely the main thing you want to take about this deck, that it is an offensive powerhouse and what it can do. With that being said, defense, just 3 out of 5 stars. I don't have a lot to say about this. Maybe could have gave it a 0.5 being in blue, the blue color trigger bouncing something. But I think the only decks that get that free 0.5 are yellow decks. And then you have to kind of do something a little extra. And the deck doesn't do anything extra outside of the defense. If anything, this could have been knocked 0.5 because you're really not wanting to block early because you want to keep your Levi's down. But most decks you have to do something really bad to get a negative on the defense. And it's just a 3 out of 5 stars. Doesn't do anything special. Nothing bad on defense either. And you do have the 4-drop Air Wing, 3-drop Air Wing, and the 5-cost Raid Levi to kind of keep in the game. The consistency, just a 3 out of 5. It doesn't do a whole lot to help its consistency. This deck is kind of bricky in some instances where you kind of need to keep your energy at a high amount and you need to keep it constant throughout the game. And if you raid at certain times, you can mess up your energy where you don't get to play the Levi on curve the turns that you want to. And it could use more searching power as well. The deck is just consistent enough. It doesn't do anything horrible with consistency. It has a couple instances of draw one, trash one, all these things like that. But it doesn't do anything special. And for the most part, a deck has to be lacking in something to not get 3 out of 5 stars. That's why my rating is so strict, because I do give most decks the benefit of the doubt, and you have to do something negatively to really get past, under the 2.5 stars, which most decks are, just 2.5. And as long as you have a couple raid targets, I think the consistency and defense keeps you at a 3 out of 5 stars. The removal / utility is a 4 out of 5 stars. Now, the reason this got bumped up from a 3 out of 5, I initially had it at that, but I went back, I make all these gradings, I go back, I reevaluate. The speed, I gave it a plus 0.5, and the removal / utility, I actually gave it a whole star point once I realized that, snipe is a form of removal, and it is a really good one because you get to pick who you're swinging over, right? And that and the Levi, made Levi being able to let you, take a character that make it lose 2,000 is also good utility, and just being able to boost your, boosting your characters and, negging your opponent's characters is where this utility comes out of, and the deck does it really, really well, and being able to snipe out of it is a lot of removal. So 4 out of 5 stars on the removal / utility for this deck. Really, really good. Extracurriculars, I gave the skill of the deck a 4 out of 5 because, like I said, it's not as straightforward to play as you would think. You can mess up your energy lines. You can misplay with the way that you want to do the action points going into your combat. And the fun level is a 5 out of 5. I think that this is probably the most fun deck to play in this entire set because the way that you get to, swing in, the turns that you get the Levi payoff are insane and they feel really, really good, and it's really scary, but it's not super easy to do. And I think that that's why this deck is not absolutely busted, because it's not the most consistent deck in the world. If this deck had been more consistent and faster with what it did, it would be insane. But it is a fun deck to play when you get that Levi payoff. So, key notes from this deck. It's so much fun to play. I keep saying that over and over again, but it is a lot of fun to play. You're going to have a lot of fun playing this deck. But at the same time, if you don't pop off with it, you can still, play normal not League of Legends, Union Arena in the game, just being able to just raid it down a couple of stuff, maybe do some stuff with your Irwins. But it is just a lot of fun to play, just because you're playing with Levi as well, a fan favorite character for a lot of people for sure. Decently consistent for an aggro deck. Most of the time you see these decks that are super aggro like this kind of have some deficiency in consistency. Now, while this deck doesn't do anything insane for its consistency, it's not lacking in consistency either. So I did think that it was kind of surprising how decently consistent it was. I think every 2 out of 3 games you're going to do your Levi pop-off stuff. The games where you don't doesn't feel amazing, but you still have a chance in a lot of those games. If you live long enough that they let you stay in the game to eventually get to it, you will pop off, right? Another key note that is a positive, multi-attacking snipe is so strong. It really, really is. And insane that this card gets it, and obviously y'all know I am a green Kurapika player, and if I had a way to give my Kurapika double attack along with the snipe and impact, that would be insane. But nevertheless, Levi gets the double attack and snipe, which is really, really cool. And it offers decent removal in the terms of bounce. You're in blue, so you get the bounce color trigger. You got a couple other instances that let you bounce characters if you pay an extra point with the Levi. So pretty decent removal for an aggro deck, which we don't see in the, Kirito Asuna blue deck. So a little different from that deck, but maybe not as consistent as the double attacking shenanigans. So some of the negatives, the mix of combo and aggro makes some games feel bad, right? Like if you fall behind and you're having to block out with some of your characters, you're gonna feel yourself be in a tough spot. So you really just want to take those hits. Hopefully let your opponent hit something in your life that gives you some kind of value. But if you do get beat down early in the game, you want to be combo and aggro, but you're trying to stay alive. So I think in most instances, a tip for you guys to take is to just take the hits, get your life, keep your board stable so that way then you can pop off later. And then falling behind early can be fatal. Like I said, if you go against a deck that has multiple 4-drops coming down on turn 3 or 4, and you're not already into the Levi's, you don't have a lot of ways to block those out, and you're going to take a lot of damage early. But don't forget, you will get value from your life by having to take those hits. So really quickly, I want to show you guys what I built for the deck profile so far. Obviously, I'm using experts.dev for all of these deck profiles. It's the site I love the most. You have to run 4 of all of your Levi's. I think all these cards are really, really essential to be in the deck. And with that being said, I think you have to run 4 of your Irwins, both instances of the Irvings, and 4 instances of your Levi's. So the deck doesn't have a lot of room for creative deck building, in my personal opinion anyways. Maybe there is, but you do want to just max out on a lot of cards, and you can see that's exactly what I've done. 4 copies of Levi's all the way across, through Aaron, through Irwings, all the way up and through, and the only card that is not a 4 of is the Mikasa. That is your draw 1, trash 1 trigger. You just want to see the cards, and you just want to do the big thing that the deck does. And with that being said, you want to just max out on all the cards. I know this is probably not the most creative list in the world, but I do think that you need to see these cards, and if you want to see them consistently enough, you don't mind that you don't do a lot early, right? There's not a lot of things early that you can do that are actually really, really crazy outside of this Levi putting a lot of pressure on your opponent to block a 2-drop 4K, which in some instances is enough just to give you a couple of those free attacks in the game. But it is a pretty cookie cutter list, I think, that you have to run with this deck, and I think that that is the most consistent way to do it. I think if you start mixing it up a little bit, you're going to come into instances where I think that you won't see the cards to combo off when you need them. So I think just running maxed out copies of all the cards to make sure you see them, helps you play into the play style that you just want to do the big Levi play. And the best way to make sure that you do that is by maxing out on the copies of the cards so you see them. You're not going to do anything crazy early in the game anyways, so why run any pieces that are going to mess up your early game and mess up your late game just to try to keep you alive early in the game, right? So I think that just maxing out on all these cards and then maybe at the bottom end switching it up a little bit can be in your best interest. Now, 42 triggers is pretty good in the deck as well, and that's what it's running. 4 of this Levi right here, not giving you any triggers, and 4 of the Aaron double energy generator, not giving you any triggers. So 8 cards right there. I think if you wanted to switch it up to make it a little consistent, but this double energy generator Aaron is super important in the deck, and you do not want to go lower on that. But that is my deck profile for Levi there. Now, going on to 4th place, still a really good deck in its own right, the 104th division. I gave this deck, this is the other red deck, a really, really cool deck playing with a lot of our main characters. And this deck here is, really cool. It does a lot of solid things. This is the deck from the set that I think is the, optimal, you kind of do a little bit of everything, solid Union Arena deck. I don't think it shines crazily doing anything in particular, but it is a really fun deck. This is main deck that you probably build out of the structure deck stuff. This deck is really solid, really, really strong, and for a base deck that they got you playing with from the starter deck stuff, it is actually pretty strong. I think a higher grade than I give most of the decks coming out. You only need a couple cards from the set to power it up, and it is a pretty strong deck, being able to let you have some very creative deck buildings. I think that this deck we could probably see a higher ceiling on once more people fill out what are the best cards to play in the particular deck and the most streamlined way to do it and what to do in those instances. But going into the grading, I gave this the 104th division or Cadet Corps 104th red deck, however you want to call it, 17.5 out of 25 stars. So an above average deck in the terms of a Union Arena trading card deck. I gave the speed a 3.5 stars out of 5. The deck does have multiple 4-drop raid targets. I think that is what pushes it from the 3 to a 3.5. I didn't want to quite give it the 4. I do think that it could have been 4 full stars here, but in some of the instances, the arming makes it really hard because you want to play the arming for your double energy generator. In a lot of the games that I played and I played against this deck, the arming feels really, really awkward. I think if the arming could just get his effect either way, it didn't have to be on the front line, this speed of this deck would be a 4 out of 5 stars. But I'm holding it back from that one play feeling a little awkward. But if you wanted to knock this one up to a 4 to 5 stars, I could totally see it. I wouldn't be, you know, reminisced on it. I did have this at 4 out of 5 stars, but after I went back and revised it, really thinking about the deck, I took it down just a little bit because I don't think the speed is enough to be a full 4 stars, even though it does have technically, you know, the 12 different 4-drop raids, which I usually say is enough to get you the 4 to 5 stars, but you just have to play the deck, and maybe you guys can, you know, let me know too what you think about this. If it should just be 4 out of 5, I feel like it's a little awkward, but in most cases, if a deck has 12 raid targets that are 4-drop, that usually makes it a 4 out of 5, no doubt for me. So this one can be, if you want to take this rating as a 17.5 out of 18, instead, I wouldn't be remiss from that, right? It's not that big of a deal. 3, 6, 9, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17.5. So I messed up all this one here, so I guess I did give it 8.5 out of this, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So yeah, I guess this one was a 4 stars out of 5. So let me edit that one real quick. Apparently I don't know how to math. If I can get it to come out. Sorry about that. Yeah, I cannot math. This one should be a little bit higher when I was doing it here. 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Yeah, so I did give it that one plus the 4. So now I feel kind of silly. Let's just give it the 4 stars. Having to edit this one on the go of recording. Not going to go back and do that. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17.5. There we go. I just messed up on that one. No big deal. 0.5 there. Now that makes more sense. There we go. But yeah, still 17.5. It is a 4 out of 5 stars. So ignore everything I said for the last couple seconds. But all those points still stand. It has 12 different raid targets you can run. Then in offense for the star rating, I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. And this is probably where I was talking about the arming situation coming into play. I know when I revised it, I was thinking about what I could do for the deck. And I made the offense a 0.5 instead of a 4 because the arming is a little awkward. You do have multiple instances of impact. You do have 12 different raid targets. And I think that the 12 raid targets is what gives this deck even these different opportunities to be a 4 or 3.5 stars out of 5 because you just have so many raids, right? It's just you're rushing down raid targets, which in the game is just so strong. That 4K body being so important in the game for you to have out. The defense being a 3 out of 5 stars. It doesn't do anything special on defense. Maybe this could be a little bit higher as well, considering it has the multiple raid targets, but it doesn't do anything crazy, right? So maybe I'm sleeping on this deck a little bit. Maybe I could have gave it another half star here, pushing it up to the 18, which is probably where the deck should have been at in the first place. But, you know, having so many raid targets, I keep saying it, that's the star of this deck, is just being able to do so many different things and have different raid targets. Consistency, 3 out of 5 stars. Solid here, pretty decent on everything that you want to do. You do a little bit of everything. There's no point in instance where anything feels awkward. And maybe I'm just stuck on how awkward and annoying the arming feels, but just 3 out of 5 stars. This is probably the deck I'm sleeping on the most from this set. I feel like a lot of people are a lot higher on this deck than I am, but it is what it is, right? Just my opinions based off of the couple games I got to play with each of them. But removal / utility, I'd give it a 4 out of 5. The deck does a little bit of everything. And if I had to say a star of what the deck wants to do, it is a little bit of everything, right? I think the removal / utility is the main thing you want to take into this deck because you have a lot of different raid targets that do a lot of different things, and it can, you know, help you be able to play the deck however you want. So if there's a main star rating, I know it's tied with speed being 4 out of 5 stars, but the removal / utility of the deck is the main thing that I think is the star of the deck. So with all that being added up, we did it again. It's 17.5 out of 25. I just had the, you know, shadings of the cards or the stars in different spots, but speed is a 4 out of 5. Offense is a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Defense, a 3 out of 5 stars. Consistency, a 3 out of 5 stars. And removal being 4 out of 5 stars. Putting this deck in a really solid spot. 17.5. Make it 18 if you really want to out of 25. still a really, really strong deck, and maybe I'm just sleeping on it a little bit. That could swing a whole point or a whole star. Either way or the other, if you gave this in, 18 or 18.5, we could probably do it. Maybe I was just trying to, make a little bit of different enough in the decks. They had to be rated in a certain way regardless, right? Not a lot of times where I get a tie. And maybe I just spent too much time thinking about this one on the regrading process, but it is a really solid deck. For the extracurriculars, on skill, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and on the fun level, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The reason the skill, I think, is a little more than you would think is, like I said, when a deck can do a little bit of different things, it makes it hard for you to know exactly what you want to do, which is a good thing to have in deck because then it can lead to more creative deck building for a lot of players to do. And it's just 4 out of 5 for the same reason alone, because it's fun to do different raids and do different things and kind of, sometimes it lines up. Decks that do a little bit of everything, you can give you that one opportunity where if I just saw these 2 cards at this particular time, I could pop off and do the thing. And that makes for, pretty different play styles between matchups and games, which makes it more fun to play. So, key notes on the 104th deck profile for this one. Key notes to take. It does a little bit of everything. I know I said that a lot in the profile so far going on the star ratings, but it has impact, it has neg BP points, it has restand, you can blow stuff up, etc., etc. It does a little bit of everything, and that is one of the main sticking points of this deck is that you can build it a lot of different ways. Another keynote is it has plenty of raids and 4K bodies. They are a lot of 4K bodies galore in a lot of games. If you're just more consistent than your opponent, you could really be popping off with this deck, and that's probably another part where I didn't think about to give it the half star on here. This is definitely a deck I'm probably sleeping on. I could see this easily being a 19 out of 25 at the moment, but I did give it a 17.5 out of 25. I'll go with my initial grading on this, but the more I talk about it, it just seems like having so many 4K bodies seems so busted that you can rate on. You can control, the last keynote I want to talk about is you can control and close out the game equally as well, right? If you want to be more controller, you can. If you want to be more aggressive, you can. The deck can do a little bit of everything, making it a very strong, solid deck. I guess the main reason is that in a lot of instances, the more streamlined you are into a certain play style, the maybe better a deck can be, built to be optimized. And this is a deck that probably gets better as time goes on when people figure out exactly what cards are the best to play in it, where it could easily shoot up as the best deck from the set. I could absolutely totally see that, but at the moment, where most people sit in the game and their thoughts about this deck, a pretty solid, rogue tier probably-ish deck. So some of the negatives, having to manage effects in the most optimal way, which is a negative of having a little bit of everything. Sometimes it's harder to figure out exactly what you want to do. And then another negative, I brought it up multiple times just going over the star ratings. This is probably the most controversial card in the whole deck that makes it feel weird, is that Arming is a double energy generator, but his effect only activates if he's on the front line, which is so annoying, and I don't know why they did that to this card. Spent a lot more time on this deck than I initially thought I would, but here we go, 104th. This is my deck profile for it here. Only running 2 of the Arming. It seems like a very essential card in the deck, but like I said, it is very weird in the way that you want to play it. Maxing out on 4 of the Aryan raids, both of each of those 4, and the Mikasa, because I think that that is the best part of the deck, is having 12 different raid targets that you can do on top of. With that being said, I think that means that you have to max out on a lot of the Aryans and Mikasas that are early in the game that you can, especially the color trigger being a really, really important one. And this double energy Aryan, being your 4K later in the game does come up clutch, but you want to keep it on the energy line, which also makes it really awkward. So the Aryan and the Arming being characters that also want to be on the front line with their effects make it a little annoying with the deck to have to play them, but you have to play them because they're double energy generators. You want to just keep them on the back line, but then their effects say they want to go to the front line. But this is my deck profile for it that I have at the moment. I'm sure this is one I will work on a lot just to try to fine-tail the details. So now, going on to the 5th and 6th decks, respectively, we have Marleyan Warriors and also Zeke Pure Titans. I won't spend a lot of time on these decks because these are definitely the 2 decks that struggle the most from the set, and I do think it's very, very clear to see looking at these decks, and a lot of people just in the 2 or 3 days we got to test the cards at the shop through the pre-release weekend, they both feel like decks that you're working and pulling at strings to try to make really, really strong. So I'm going to go through these pretty quick because there's not a lot to say about these decks. Now, I do think the Marleyan Warriors is a solid, normal, build them up with a high payoff, green build them up deck, but maybe just takes a little bit longer to get there But the instance of this deck inhibiting itself from pushing that state any further, being that your Colossal Titan does have to take up that extra spot on your front line, makes it a little bit harder to do. But that being said, I gave it a 15.5 out of 25, so just around that average solid Union Arena deck lane. Now maybe this could be a little bit higher as well, but I don't believe in this deck quite as much. I do see the potential for it, and maybe, a lot of us at the shop just weren't, being as creative as we probably could with the deck. But I do think that the fact that you want to build up to this big play, this is probably a key point taken from it, but then you also can't, you can't play multiple Colossal Titans out. It just makes it harder. And I get it. It is thematic, which is really, really cool. All of these raids feel very impactful and very, very strong, but just the fact that you do play one card down from the deck once you get to your late game makes it feel a little bit harder to, make the payoff feel as good, because it's like you're doing all this stuff to get a payoff, and then the deck negatively affects you for doing so. As much sense as it makes, right? Because the Colossal Titan is an insanely strong card, but it doesn't feel good to have to do that. But the star grade, 15.5 out of 25 on the stars. Speed rating, 3 out of 5. It does nothing special. It does nothing negative on the speed part. The only reason it got to keep this 3 out of 5 on the star rating is because Annie does help you reduce your cost of your other Titans, and you do have a lot of energy generation, so that kept this deck at being a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Consider it is a build 'em up deck, but this is when I was very surprised that I gave it 3 out of 5. But I do think that the energy generation and the Annie letting you play those cards for cheaper helps speed the deck up and not make it a negative thing for how much you're trying to build up. I do think the offensive power is pretty high, especially considering your late game is a damage 2, impact 1, but if you take this into account with what the red deck can do for a faster pace and with multiple instances of damage 2, it's not on that same level. Just 3 out of 5 stars on the offense. It does have that late game payoff, but it's not enough to really make you feel like you're ending the game on those plays. I don't think in any world do you feel like as soon as you put the Colossal Titan down, you win, where in as most instances with the red Attack Titan deck, if you have the 6 and the 8 drop down, and you're pushing that late game pace, you are a big powerhouse. Whereas this one is lacking on it a little bit. As crazy as that seems, I know the stats make it seem insane because it's the BP, it's the damage 2, the BP being 6k, the damage 2, impact 1, all that stuff, but just still a 3 out of 5 on that powerhouse. I think if the Annie had been a 4-drop raid, maybe with like impact or something, this would put the deck over the top. But just 3 out of 5. Nothing special, but nothing crazy bad either. Still a solid offensive deck. Defense, 3 out of 5. Same thing here. If the BP of the low characters that you dropped weren't like at a decent pace, right? Like sometimes you can just throw down your 3-drop, Bertolt and Rainer, the 2500 BP and the double energy generator that is 4k during your turn, I think. If you couldn't drop those down, probably negs this down. But both of those cards save this deck from being, a decent defensive level, and you do have the green color trigger, which does come in clutch a lot of times because you are running a lot of little bodies in the deck. So 3 out of 5 stars on defense, 3 out of 5 stars on consistency. The deck is decently consistent. Honestly, having to play the Search Annie does feel okay, but then it takes your trigger count down a little bit more. And you don't like to do that because the Rainer also doesn't have a trigger, and neither does the double energy generator Annie. So to be honest, I think I'm doing this deck a favor by giving it a 3 out of 5. It probably should be a 2.5 stars out of 5, but I don't like to be so negative about decks. I do think that it's consistent enough trying to get there, and I do think in most games you will be able to play down the Colossal Titan, so I think that helps out the consistency with just how many double energy generators. You even have a triple energy generator in the deck, which helps load into the consistency of the deck as well. Removal / utility, 3 out of 5 for the deck. Nothing crazy on the utility, nothing crazy on the removal. Most of your removal is pretty solid on the bodies alone, but not anything crazy to punish your opponent early and control them. Just a very solid deck overall. This deck is not bad, right? I know most people see my gradings, they say it's 15.5 out of 25 stars. That's above average, right? Because just being at the 15 is solid enough alone. It's a deck that you can build and you can play it. If you see everything perfect and you straight go throughout all the way through the Colossal Titan pretty quickly, you will win a lot of games that way, but I think that's 1 out of every 3 games. You do that on curve in the perfect world, but when you see it happen, it does do it pretty well. Extracurriculars, 4 out of 5 stars for both skill and fun level. You do have to manage your resources on your energy. You do have to manage that you keep certain bodies, like whatever raid you have in your hand, you need to keep that lower drop card safe on the back line. And it does take a little skill to build up the energy of the deck. But the fun level is pretty high once you get to have all 3 of them out at the same time. It does feel really thematic and cool, so that does add to the fun level a little bit. But the Marleyan Warrior Titans key notes: the late game is strong but also inhibiting. I touched on that before. The Colossal Titan taking up that extra spot makes sense, but it feels bad. Thematic and all raid cards feel impactful. All the raid cards are really strong. Annie helps you, bring another character out. Raynar, he has the Nullify Impact, which is really cool. Makes sense being the Armor Titan defensive wall. And then just the Colossal Titan giving you that damage too. Everything feels very thematic and cool. And if these are some of your favorite characters, you will have fun playing this deck and it will be a cool deck. Some of the negatives: your opponent knows to aggro you down before the late game. Like as soon as they see that you're playing this deck, everyone, yourself included, you should see if you're playing against this deck, just start playing down the 2k bodies, your 2500k bodies. The only early game card that can answer that is the Raynar. They're not going to want to put it on the front line because it's their double energy generator. So you do want to just play those 2500 to 3000 PP bodies early and swing at your opponent. Don't let them be able to play down the Colossal Titan, because once that Colossal Titan does come out, the deck does start really coming alive and you're going to have a hard time answering it. But your opponent knows to aggro you down before that happened, right? And if they don't, though, you know now. Just aggro this deck out. You don't even have to be an aggro deck to be able to really swing through with this deck. Just put out your 2500k BP bodies, and the deck will have a really hard time answering that without having to trade their bodies that they want to be able to use to search and get value and get energy. And then maintaining your energy is a negative. While there are a lot of cards that are double energy generators, one also being a triple energy generator, you need to stay alive before you get to that point, and a lot of times you're probably going to find yourself down to 4. You've taken 3 to 4 or 5 hits before you really get the Colossal Titan down, which also makes you maintaining energy hard, because if you're blocking and having to trade out bodies, now you're not able to keep the energy quite so easily. Now, a quick deck profile. This is the deck profile I am going with for myself. I do think that the Titan Force is a key card in the deck. Running this at a 2 of, it is a get trigger. You also don't want to see it all the time, because you do have to activate main, place one card from your hand to your sideline. It generates another energy generator, but the fact that it is just a double energy generator that stays on your back line, that you don't have to worry about your opponent being able to kill in most instances, is a key part and be able to see it in the deck. And it does have this really cool event. Are we doing it, now, here? I think this is a pretty cool thematic card. You can just give a card, double energy generator, and then if you have Bertolt on your front, on your field, you get the AP back. So it's like a free AP play to get 2 energy, which helps you cheat into the Colossal Titan. And then it has the most unique special in the entire game. We fight now. We decide this right here. 9 energy, double action point card. It says choose one of the abilities listed below. If there's a character with Raynar in its name on your field, you choose all instead. You get to look at the top 7 cards of your deck, reveal up to 2 green character cards among them, and add them to your hand. So this is a big consistent piece of the deck, but you have to see this card and be able to play it also. Place remaining cards on the bottom of your deck in any order. And then also play up to 2 green characters if 4 or more require energy, and 1 AP cost from your hand set to active onto your front line or perform raid with them on characters in your field. This is the key card in the deck. You want to see this later in the game. You want to be able to play it down, search, get the cards you need, and be able to raid onto them. If you resolve this card, you get it down, you're able to play this, most of those games, you're going to win the game. This card is really, really strong. Now, you don't get to, kill your opponent's cards, but you're going to do that with your big, crazy Titans. Anyways, because, when Bertolt comes down, sorry, I kept saying damage 2, but it's damage 3. When play sideline, all characters with 0 require energy on your opponent's front line. This character cannot be chosen by your opponent's characters or trigger abilities until the end of the turn, which makes him really, really safe blocker. And the number cards you can place into your front line is reduced by 1, the negative part about the card. But definitely a big game ender. I think only running 3 of all the raid cards is what I was going with. I think this helps makes the deck a little bit more consistent for you to be able to run a couple different tech cards. I think that this Armor Titan gives you a lot of pressure early in the game to be able to fight and combat your opponent a little bit, to where, and without this card, I don't think you have a lot of ways to do that. But my list is a little bit all over the place, probably not as cookie cutter as most people's list, but I do think you only need to see 1 of each of the Titans, maybe go up to 4 on the Annie, but I think 3 of the Armor Titan and the Colossal Titan are about where you want to be. I think 4 is too much because most of the time you're only playing one of each of these, and you do have ways to search it out if you don't already have it. But that is my deck profile for that particular deck. And now let's go last, but definitely least, is going to be the last green deck from this set. It's going to be Zeke Pure Titans. Now, this deck is really cool. Zeke is definitely a really cool character in the game. This deck is just lacking a lot of things that you want in a deck. And with that being said, I was probably really harsh on this deck because it doesn't feel good to, you know, try to make this deck work. I probably was a little tough by the time I got to this one and was doing it. I had a lot of bad taste in my mouth. I ended up myself building a kind of Zeke hybrid deck that I do think performs a lot better than this deck. But this deck in general, I think, is just a solid deck that you can build, but it feels kind of bad. I think it's missing something. Probably one of the few decks I did not give a 15 out of 25 on these star review ratings, but I think that it does struggle in some aspects, but it does have a really cool, fun way to play the game where like you get to reduce your Zeke for the number of pure Titans you have on the field. So this Zeke doesn't actually cost 7, right? Most cases he'll cost you 4 or 5, which a lot of times is also hard to manage because there aren't a ton of double energy generators that you run in the deck because you kind of want to, you know, the pure Titan, you want to be able to play that out onto the front line because it is your 3000 BP body. And he does let you, you know, when he's sideline, play another character out, but he's your double energy generator that they make you want to play on the front line, which doesn't feel great. I think if the Pure Titan was just, you know, when played, play something out, the deck would feel a million times better. It would probably change everything about the deck, make it a 16 out of 25 stars, but the Pure Titan needing to be sidelined, being your double energy generator, and also being one of your aggression cards makes it feel really, really bad. I wish they would have changed that around in some ways, right? Like make something that is your double energy generator, not also the way that you survive in the early games, but understandably so. Maybe I don't understand some of the stat distributions they made with this deck. It makes it feel kind of clunky. And the main, you know, thing I have to take from it is like I just said, the Pure Titan is one of the most important cards in the deck, but they made it your double energy generator, and it has to be sidelined, so it's kind of weird. And then also Rod Reese, the Rod Reese only has, you know, the one Rod Reese to be able to raid on top of, and this is honestly the star of the entire show for the deck, is going to be the Rod Reese Titan. It's a very impactful card, but you only have the 4 Rod Reese 0 drops to be able to, you know, raid it on top of. Now, the Rod Reese is really strong. He is, when played, you know, boost something 1,000, which does come in clutch, but if you had any other combination of, you know, 4 more Rod Reeses, or the double energy on your form of Pure Titans on a character you wanted to keep in the back line, I think this deck immediately jumps to like a 16, 17 out of 25. But with that being said, I know I talked a lot about stuff, but let's go into the grades. I gave it a 14 out of 25. I'm going to go through this one pretty quick. Speed, 3 out of 5. It does nothing crazy. This one was the one I was kind of thinking about giving it the extra star to make it a 15, but that is not true. I can't do that. I think even if the Pure Titan just said when played, play that out, it would bump this up to a 4 out of 5 stars. But just a 3 out of 5 stars. You do have a 4 cost raid. The Zeke is essentially in you know, most cases only a 5 cost raid. A lot of times only 4, so it's decently speedy enough. The offensive power is 3 out of 5 stars. To be honest, I thought about giving this one, you know, a half star, so maybe I'm going to do it. We're in the video, but I'll do some editing. I will give this half a star on both of these because I do think that this deck is better than I am giving it credit for. I do think it deserves to be a 15, you know, and this will help get it there. I've probably been a little generous at the end of the video trying to do this, but 15 out of 25 is what we're going with because it's not that bad of a deck. I was probably just really annoyed with how much better I wanted this deck to be, but the speed is pretty decent. Having multiple, you know, essentially 4 drop raid cards. You do have a lot of, you know, 3,000 bodies that you can just throw on the board and try to rush your opponent with those, as bad as it feels to get rid of your double energy generator. And the offense gets the plus 0.5 by the Rod Reese Titan alone, I think. It having damage to makes your opponent have to block the character, and, you know, it's going to be a 6K, so they're going to lose whatever character they block with. So 15, so, you know, 3.5 stars out of speed and offense. Defense does just keep a 2 out of 5 stars. I think that it does negatively impact a deck that the Pure Titan has to be sidelined. And then also, none of your little titans do give you triggers. A lot of them, well, I didn't say none of them, but the pure titan, the small one, that's win, play, draw card, your consistency card, it doesn't have a trigger. Neither does the pure titan, neither does one of the Zekes. So just trying to keep the deck at, 40 triggers is really hard and next to impossible without just making it super generic on what you're doing. But 3 out of 5 stars. I think it negatively impacts the deck, so that is where it's lacking at for sure. Consistency is 3 out of 5. You'll definitely do the whole Rod Reese shenanigans a decent amount, and the Zeke shenanigans just about every game, being able to boost your whole board. But the issue is they don't keep that BP boost during your opponent's turn. So once you go and swing out with a lot of 4 or 5Ks, your opponent in most cases is just going to take those swings. Knowing that you will have to answer their cards and not be able to block them out, because you only get that boost on the turn it's played to boost them all by 1,000 from the Zeke. Now you will essentially from each turn after that be able to give something 1,000 in impact, but for that one turn that you kind of go all gas out, if you don't win that turn, you're not really going to win the game. But it is consistent enough in doing that. And then 3 out of 5 for removal / utility. The Rod Reese Titan alone is essentially damage 2 or kill a body, so that is part of your utility. And you do, Titan Injection is just a really, really good card, being able to let you, cycle through your deck. Definitely one of the stars of the show for the deck. Extracurricular skill, 3 out of 5. Fun, 3 out of 5. You're pulling at strings to really pop off with the deck, but when you do, it is pretty fun. And I had 1 out of the 5 games I played where I just popped off. I saw the Rod Reese early. I was able to raid the Rod Reese after I raided onto the Zeke, because I already had the 3 different Pure Titans out. So I was able to go Zeke, Rod Reese Titan, and then also be able to play out characters that turn. I had 2 on the front line, so that was a big swing play. It felt really, really good. Just to then get specialed. My Rod Reese Titan got specialed after that because I just didn't want to deal with the damage 2. But I did win that game regardless. But, this deck can be really, really scary if you get that combo off. But what are the keynotes? Rod Reese Titan is super strong. Definitely the star of the show. It is insane being a 6K damage 2 win sideline draw card. So it is the most important card of the deck. But you only have 1 Rod Reese to raid on top of it. Them adding another Rod Reese would have gave this deck a whole another 1.5 stars, I think, to be completely honest. You can create a wall of low-cost attackers, which is very interesting, being able to do that, just being able to, don't really ever block out. Just try to swing through. Don't lose your bodies. Let Zeke be able to boost up something and let you get that value. If you have multiple Zekes out, now you're really talking, because now you're going to be able to get multiple instances of the impact 1. Zeke doesn't really cost 7. It's a pretty key note. I don't think any time I ever paid him for 7. Now, in your brain, you see the 7s. When I played with it a couple times the first 2 games, I wasn't realizing, hey, I don't need 7 energy because he reduces it. Like, I just don't know why I'm doing that self. But the deck is very consistent in what it does for the most part. You're just trying to get through. The Zeke stuff is consistent, not the Rod Reese stuff. It's not consistent because you don't have another Rod Reese. The deck needs more impact and finishing power. I know that that's asking for a lot. The deck's supposed to be low to the ground to kind of swarm your opponent out, but it does. And then Rod Reese only has 1 card, and the deck just needs more support. Those are some of the negatives. Now, I do want to give you guys a little bit of a generic deck profile. This is not my particular deck profile that I figured out with the Annie later on, but I think this is a solid, true build of the deck that you can play. 4 of all the raids that you can, 3 of a lot of your pure titans, and then just trying to round it out with a little Annie package to search. And I do think that, the Titan Injection is the most important card in the deck. Look at the top 4. Reveal 1 card from among them, add it to your hand. Place remaining cards in your bottom deck in any order. If the card you revealed was Pure Titan or Rod Reese or Zeke in its card name, choose one of your APs and switch it to active. So it's a free search from the top 4. Get your AP back. Get any of the cards in your deck. It's every card in the deck outside of any that you cannot get with this. So really awesome search card, and is a color trigger, which you hope to have these in your life as well. The kill spell is pretty good too, just needing a Zeke to be able to pop something off. But the deck is okay. It's a solid deck. It's not anything horrible, but it's not anything special. And that is why I gave it that grade of just the 15 out of 25 star grade. Now to recap, let's go back at the bottom here. We have Zeke, 15 out of 25, solid deck, nothing crazy. The Marleyan Warrior Titans, 15.5 out of 25. Nothing crazy with the deck. Probably a little low on the rating for this one, but I am pretty fair and pretty strict with what my ratings are. I do think that if you ever saw this deck win a tournament, I would not be surprised. Or topping a tournament. Definitely not a big tournament, but like your locals or something, the deck could definitely do it. And to be honest, you know, 104th I'm probably low on too, but the final grade for this one being a 17.5 out of 25 stars. Really strong deck, a lot of speed, a lot of raid targets, a lot of offensive power. Next up, in third place, the Levi aggro blue deck being 18.5 out of 25 stars. It is an offensive powerhouse with all the double attacking snipes. Pretty speedy too, with a couple of raids that you got, and just, you know, base BP of 3,000 to 35 that you can put on your opponent. Second place, the Attack on Titan, Attack Titan red deck, 19 out of 25. It's a very speedy deck in the terms of the way it generates its energy and searches the deck. It's super consistent, and it is an offensive powerhouse, big time. Almost pushing for the 5 stars there, but just missing out a little bit. The double, you know, damage to raid targets are insane. Like, that payoff is more than the green deck, and it's not a green deck. And the highest rating I gave all the Attack on Titan decks is going to be 20 out of 25, and it is Historia blue events. The main reason it gets this is because the deck is super fast and super consistent, and it has a lot of utility and draw power. The consistency being 5 stars is the key point of why this deck is so high, but I do think that these top 3 decks are all decks that you can kind of take into tournaments and expect to do really, really well and win with, where the bottom 3 decks I have here, you're probably pulling a little bit harder to try to make that happen, but I do think that Levi, the Attack Titan, and Historia decks are all really strong decks that you can take into a big tournament and probably do pretty well with them. But Historia being like if you want a consistent deck, Attack Titan if you want to go straight power, in-game stuff, and then Levi if you just want to combo off and make your opponent mad for seeing the God Hand. But that is this video. I know that this was a long one. I will try to edit this one down to be shorter in the different type of categories for each deck to make it a little bit more easy to consume. But if you watch the whole video for this one, I appreciate y'all hanging out with me today. Please leave the video a like, subscribe to the channel. I will do more videos like this. I want to do whatever you guys need me to do. I love covering Union Arena. It is a lot of fun. But thank y'all for hanging out with me today. Standout Gaming. Peace.